97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I love coaching this football team. I love coaching those players in there.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
It is Football at 4, the often imitated, never duplicated Football at 4. It's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you locally here by our friends over at PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Mike Gill, Hunter Brody, and Geoff Mosher is in from the Inside the Birds podcast. And he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk on the hotline. Mosh, what's up, pal?
Fellas, how we doing today?
We are enjoying the day. A lot of good spirited conversation back and forth.
Beautiful day.
Yeah, it's perfect outside. Going to be a good weekend, too. By the way, you're the only person who has not RSVP'd yet. Do you know that?
Well, there's an issue that I've got with my own family because they were that weekend was there were some family plans that were either on or off or on or off. And last I heard, it was now going to be on. So, but if it's off, then the calendar is clear. Unfortunately, you know how family is, Mike. You try to get them all on the same page, and it's very dicey.
I know. I'm the one putting this thing together. That's why I'm trying to get a head count. You know, I got to know how much food, all that kind of stuff.
That's true. I'm sorry.
Even the PT has RSVP. That's rare.
Well, of course, you've got food there, right?
That is true. That is true. All right, let's get into what we got going on today because there is a lot, and we want to get your thoughts on it. One, Deshaun Jackson back at practice, Alshon Jeffery back at practice, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside back at practice. Give us the lowdown on your anticipation for their availability.
Well, I think, unfortunately, to say anything declarative now would just be to speculate. First of all, we've got to see the report, the injury report, which usually comes out when I'm on the phone with you guys. So I'm trying to check. But as far as how, I'm sorry, not the injury report, but per se the practice report on what they're able to do. It was I found it very strange that Alshon Jeffery, I think last week it was able to practice on Wednesday and Thursday, but didn't on Friday. And Friday is a light walkthrough. I mean, an hour and a half kind of light deal. So the fact that he made it through Wednesday and Thursday and not Friday was a little bit kind of on the radar. But then, as you heard today, Doug Peterson said he will go back and practice today. So I think I'll be more encouraged when I see that these guys are able to string together 2 consecutive full practices and not just be limited or not just be working on the side. I think that's the big key, whether guys can make it to a Thursday practice. And in some cases, like with Fletcher Cox last week, if you make it to Friday and you're good to go, the game plan, and you were able to make it through the light practice, they'll play you if you're a veteran. But with cases like Deshaun and the hamstring, and clearly Alshon coming back from major foot surgery, I think you've got to pay more closer attention to whether or not they're full or limited, and if they're able to do it for more than one day.
Well, that's what I want to bring up with someone like Alshon, and you could throw Deshaun in the mix as well with this hamstring. Gil and I were going back and forth. It's like, okay, if they come back, you're excited because, you're talking about Fulgham right now. Now at least you're talking about Deshaun and Alshon, but how much can you really expect them to even come back? More about Alshon. It's like this guy's coming off of a Liz Frank, so he comes back. How much can you really expect out of him?
Yeah, I think in the case of Alshon, not exactly a whole lot. He's certainly not going to be able to play the whole game. Just look at Sunday night's game. I think Deebo Samuel, who was out with quite a while with a broken foot, was it that he had for the 49ers? And then he had
a Jones fracture.
Which is obviously a serious injury. And I went and saw that he played 25 snaps, and he's a pretty young guy, second year. I'm sure that they were a little cautious with him to begin with. With Alshon Jeffery, north of 30 and coming off a couple of injuries since he's been with the Eagles and getting no conditioning in, you do wonder how much of an impact he can make. Do you use him situationally, maybe red zone with the big body, or on third downs when you need a conversion? Can you get him in there and mismatch him against a smaller corner? It's possible, but again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I got to make sure that this guy can actually practice this week and do what he's supposed to do without having any impact, like side effects. For example, we might see that he practiced in full today and then tomorrow, but if he wakes up on Friday and he's very sore, which is often the case when you're coming off surgeries, that might be a red flag for the team.
J.J. Arcega-Whiteside back, and I know most people are saying, who cares? Well, the question is, it sounds like Doug Peterson cares, and he said he's still a part of what we're doing. In fact, he'll be out there today, and they're optimistic he'll be ready for Sunday. Where do you see J.J. Arcega's role? Because Monday, Doug suggested that, hey, I honestly hope I have a problem figuring out what to do. Does Travis Fulgham get a role? Is Greg Ward's role going to be lessened now? Does John Hightower get more snaps? What do you see from this wide receiver contingent that they have?
Nothing. I'm so nothing in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I think Doug's being a little obtuse when he says that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is going to be in the plans. Before he was hurt, it seemed to me that they had already moved on to him in a role where he is going to line up in the slot and block on outside zone. Okay, that's what I think the role for J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is, and I think that that's not what Doug is specifying when he says that he has a role for J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. They need somebody on the outside who can separate, who can catch the ball, who Carson trusts. And if anybody out there thinks that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside checks any of those three criteria off the box right now compared to Travis Fulgham, who obviously got the ball thrown to him on the most important time of the game last week, they're nuts. They haven't been watching. I don't see J.J. Arcega-Whiteside suddenly being healthy and then going playing 60 snaps on the outside at the X receiver. They need somebody explosive. The Steelers are going to come after them a lot. That's what they do. They're going to blitz. They're going to challenge an Eagles offense that last week they saw was trying to nickel and just nickel and dimed its way down the field. So they're going to sell out and leave the Eagle wide receivers one-on-one. And if Carson's going to have to make a play, it's going to have to be a wide receiver who can get a little separation and make a tough catch. And you have not seen any of that ability out of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside since they drafted him. It's just the reality.
Speaking of who Carson Wentz trusts, you got to throw Zach Ertz out there. I know a different position, but there is something going on with Zach Ertz right now. He's not the same player as we are accustomed to seeing, and I can look at this one of three ways. He's getting older, teams are taking him away and forcing you to beat them elsewhere, or the financial situation is really bothering him. How do you see all this affecting Ertz?
I suppose, Hunter, it could be a mix of everything you just said. I don't know about the older part so much as there's all of a sudden decline. I think it was against the Bengals where he had 7 catches for 70 yards, and that was with Carson missing him about 2 or 3 times. He could have had a monster game against the Bengals. So I know the Bengals aren't very good defensively, especially, but I don't think it's decline. I think you might be right about just demeanor right now, or it might be contract related. I felt that the 49er game, he needed to make an impact. And after the game, I thought, it was probably very difficult for him, given that he was probably, doubled and getting all sorts of attention from the Niners defense. But having talked to some people and even watched the film myself, he just did not have a good game. I mean, there were some plays that were there for him to make. Carson missed him again on one play where he was wide open, so that is also factoring into it. But he could have been more of a factor and just wasn't. He's going to have to get off of man coverage and get off of coverage in general against the Steelers. If he does not have a very good game again and you see the same thing, then I think maybe we have that conversation about some kind of concern about protecting his body and the contract and wondering how much he's really putting out there. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that because that's not really consistent with how he's been as an Eagle.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Make sure everybody out there is getting their Inside the Birds source every Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. It drops at 6 a.m. So if you need more Eagles, you can get it then. Let's go back to Fulgham real quick. Who is he? Where'd they get him? Does he have a role? Is he a one-game wonder that just, Bryce Treggs made a big catch. We never heard from him again. Shelton Gibson caught a ball 45 yards down the field. Never heard from him again. Is that Travis Fulgham, or is this a guy they like and might have some role?
Yeah, it's funny. I love those analogies that you just made because they could wind up being very, very, very on par. He's a kid who was drafted by the Lions last year out of Old Dominion, and as Adam Kaplan likes to joke on the podcast, we knew they had a basketball team, but a lot of people don't even realize they have a football team. He was a 6th-round pick. I believe he played in a couple of games, I want to say, or maybe on special teams, I believe, for the Lions. 3 games he appeared in 2019. Then he was cut, and then I believe he spent some time with the Packers, and then the Eagles wound up signing him right from the Packers, their practice squad or something of that nature. They brought him in from the Packers. So clearly there was somebody in the Eagles organization who had seen what he had done or heard about him and knew that he had a decent amount of length to him. He's 6'2", 215, but he's not slow by any means. He's not a burner, but he can, as you saw, he can get a little bit of separation and catch the ball. Adam Kaplan had mentioned on their podcast that he had been told that Fulgham did well in Detroit as far as just, acquitting himself, but they just felt they had some decent receivers, and they felt like, Travis needed to kind of mature a little bit, and maybe that's something that he's done here with his 3rd team. I think this Sunday we'll know, Mike, if Travis Fulgham's a one-catch wonder, or if he's someone that they're going to rely on. But I'll say the difference that I expect is that with Treggs, he made that catch. You're right, that was 2016. I think they were injured at wide receiver. He got in. I know they needed some explosion. He didn't really get that many opportunities after that. I can't imagine that if Deshaun and Alshon still can't play, I can't imagine you're not going to see opportunities for Travis Fulgham, because as you're mentioning now, who else would they have to put in that?
Well, I hope that JJ Arcega-Whiteside's not healthy, and then he supplants somebody, because he doesn't deserve to be out there. And they've done this in the past, where guys who don't deserve to be out there took Greg Ward's spot, and Ward outplayed those guys.
Yeah, I would be stunned, Mike. It's not just my educated guess. I mean, I've heard that the organization is down on him, and I don't even think I'm breaking news with that. I mean, you just look. There's been no production. There's been injuries. There's been just this unsteadiness with him, not even being able to catch the ball when it's thrown to him. And when Travis Fulgham makes a play like he did on Sunday night, bright lights, first game, that shows people that there's something there, at least a little bit of it there to give him another opportunity. So I can't imagine any scenario where all of a sudden Arcega-Whiteside's healthy and he's starting and playing all those snaps at the X position.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. A couple other things I want to get into on the offensive side of the ball was the line. Mailata, how he held up. Lane Johnson was in and out. For the most part, you've had 8 different guys play offensive line, I think, in the last couple of weeks here, maybe more throughout the course of the year. How did that line hold up against what is a pretty good 40? I know they're banged up, but it's a pretty good 49er defense. Yeah,
well, you remember the 2008 nightmarish game that Winston Justice had to start, Mike? Everybody remembers that, right? And the big criticism of Andy Reid after that game was, well, why didn't you protect this guy? Why didn't you stick a tight end next to him? Why didn't you have your running backs kind of chipping in that direction? And it's really never been the Andy Reidian way, and it certainly wasn't the Doug Peterson way Sunday night when you look at the formations. Occasionally they would have some tight ends lined up there, but it wasn't anything like they threw an extra lineman or an extra protector next to Mailata to ease his transition. And on top of that, it's not like he had a really experienced left guard next to him. He had Nate Herbig next to him. So that whole left side of the line was potentially there to be exposed. But what he did do, Doug Peterson, to protect Mailata and his line, and everybody saw it, was just have an offense that was predicated on rolling Carson out right, rolling Carson out left, misdirection here, play action there, quick hitter there, screen there, run there. So there really weren't that many opportunities that Jordan Mailata had to have to hold a block for 3 or 4 seconds while Carson was in the pocket looking for wide receivers to get open. There were some situations like that, and I did think in one-on-one situations he did hold up pretty well, especially when you consider the pedigree or lack thereof. But the offensive game plan was designed to make sure that he didn't have to be a really, really, potent blocker in that regard. I think it's going to be a whole, and I would also say the defense didn't really come after him. Maybe it's just not what they do. They didn't do a whole lot of stunting and twisting on the defensive line. They didn't try to make the offensive line confused and have to pass guys off to each other. I think you'll see a lot of that against Pittsburgh on Sunday. I think it'll be a whole different animal. And the idea that the Eagles, can dink and dunk their way similarly through the game and score enough points to keep up with Pittsburgh is crazy. So we're going to really see, we're going to know about Fulgham. We're going to know about this offense. We're going to know about this offensive line a lot more coming out of that game.
I was going to bring up Doug Peterson in the game plan of utilizing Carson Wentz in a different way to kind of get him out of the pocket. And what do you think is, like with Carson Wentz, he has this gamer mentality, it seems, where he's running the football more, he's getting that first down, he's lowering his shoulder. How much do you think that plays a role in his confidence in the way that he's playing right now? Like, I feel because he's playing with this different style to him, that's helping him play better than he did the first couple of games.
I think just in general, when you get a guy, Hunter, and a quarterback, and you start to get him a little bit comfortable with what he's doing, confidence then all of a sudden starts to get regrown within you. I'll go back to like week 2. Jared Goff, okay? How many times did he roll out on play action and just have a really comfortable time throwing a Cup or throwing a Woods or throwing a Higbee? Because, he's out of the pocket. Nobody's harassing him. I mean, didn't he complete his first 13 passes? So, I mean, Jared Goff's a good quarterback, but you don't put him on the echelon of quarterbacks that you think are going to complete 13 of their first 13 passes. So you look at Carson Wentz and you kind of wonder why, after he took that beating against Washington week 1, why they didn't try to get him, a little bit more outside the pocket week 2 against the Rams. And then you started to see it a little bit more against the Bengals and of course, all the time against the Niners. And I do think that helped. I think it helps him get the juices flowing. It might help him see the field a little bit better because you've got your targets on the move as you're on the move. And he's always been good about keeping his eyes downfield when he's on the run. For whatever reason, this year especially, when he's there in the pocket, he just doesn't see the whole field. He's not seeing a clear picture there. And I can't tell you why, and I'm not sure if anybody really understands what the problem is. But I do think they're rolling out and they're getting him on the run and having him use his legs to pick up first downs, and the read option that he scored a touchdown on. Thank you, Chip Kelly, right? That did do something for him as far as – and the up-tempo. I just think he functions better when things are moving a little bit quicker.
Jeff, I do want to get your take on the defense because, look, this defense is built on if that line gets pressure. They've got pressure the last 2 weeks. I thought the defense has been much better. The linebackers are obviously a problem. I do want to get into the linebackers a little bit too, because Singleton, I thought, played pretty well. Forget the fact that he had the interception. I thought he stepped in, made 2 nice tackles in 15 plays. He had 2 tackles a pick. He's 6'2", 240, can run a little bit. I don't know. I mean, did they find something with him, or is that just a flash in the pan for a game? So the defensive line getting the pressure, does that stay? Can they continue that? And the linebackers, yesterday he mentioned Gerry isn't as big as a problem. I think that's just him talking up his guy. But
yeah,
is Singleton something?
First of all, to get to your point, I mean, Jim Schwartz was a master mover of the goalposts yesterday when asked about Nate Gerry, right? Because what he said was true, but it also wasn't addressing the issue at hand. What he said was sometimes at home you see a play and there's a blown coverage or something went wrong, and Nate Gerry's the guy like in the picture, and you think, oh man, he stinks. He's there. He should be there, and he's not. Like, for example, the Tyler Higbee touchdown, the first one, against the Rams, it came when Mills was blitzing, and he wasn't supposed to be. He was supposed to be patrolling that area, and Nate kind of had to get over there late to try to stop it. He couldn't. And everybody says, oh, Nate Gerry stinks. He's there. It's not his guy. So Jim Schwartz is keenly aware that all of America saw that, and to help out Nate Gerry, he's going to say, well, not everything's on Nate Gerry. But the idea that Nate Gerry is playing well, I mean, if Jim's trying to pass that one onto the fan base, he's got another thing coming, because he's not playing well. He's missing a lot of tackles, and he's out of place a whole lot, even when America can't always see it. So for that, they've got issues at linebacker. Alex Singleton's interesting, Mike, because I thought of you the other day. I didn't notice it during the game, but I noticed it watching tape. They had a 4 linebacker package in, 4 linemen, 4 linebackers, and 3 D-backs, and they used Singleton as a blitzer. So really, it was just their normal base defense. They had 3 linebackers out there, except one of them was Bradley, one of them was Gerry, and the other was Riley. And Alex Singleton was in there simply to rush the passer from the blind side. And he got the play wound up being a play action, so the quarterback got rid of the ball quickly to the other side. But I thought of you in that, hey, here's a guy who plays hair on fire, seems to have a nose for the football. Maybe this is their idea of getting that quote unquote, that player who can blitz or who has a good nose for blitzing on the field to make something happen. But I think there's an argument to be made that he should just be on the field as a linebacker as well.
Yeah.
You're right. And look, I don't want to get too carried away because at the end of the day,
he's not Dick Butkus here. I get that.
Right,
I mean,
right. When he plays 3 games in a row and the tape develops on Alex Singleton and the Eagles lose a game, we're going to be saying, in like late October, you know what, Alex Singleton's really not that great of a linebacker either. But when your team is struggling, you see this all the time. Guys get pulled and other guys get opportunities. And I think it's fair to say he deserves an opportunity.
Well, and look, it's not like he's this, Gerry is 6'2", 225. I mean, he's an undersized linebacker who's supposed to be good in coverage. He's not. And he can't stop the run. So I don't care what Schwartz says. He's out of position all the time. And they game plan right at him. So that's that. Singleton at least has a mind to play that position. And he's not undersized. He's 6'2", 240 pounds. And by the way, the guy can run. I mean, what did they say? He was the 5th fastest runner in the league on that return for the touchdown the other night. He's a guy who has the instincts to play that position. I think that's the biggest problem with Gerry is he doesn't have the instincts to be a linebacker.
And take it for what it's worth, but Alex Singleton was the defensive player of the year, I believe, in the CFL.
Yeah, we had him on yesterday and asked him about that, like being the best defensive player in Canada and then making the transition here. Like, what's the big difference as to why you could be the best player in that league and some people don't look at you as a serviceable guy in this league, And I thought his answer was, was interesting.
Yeah, and if there's one thing that we know about Canadian football, it's that they love to throw the ball around. And so you would think that Alex Singleton is a guy that is not unfamiliar with a lot of passing concepts that the offense is trying to pull off, whether it's play action or misdirection. And you would think he has a pretty good understanding of where he needs to be in certain situations. Now, with that said, then why wasn't he out there playing? You know how it works in the NFL. This teacher's pet stuff, it can be real sometimes. And Nate Gerry, for whatever reason, is the teacher's pet for Ken Flajole. And maybe it took some really bad efforts from Gerry, who I think should just be a dime linebacker in this league and not a 2 or 3 down linebacker. Maybe now they're realizing that the teacher's pet might be really smart, but he's not exactly the most talented guy that they've got. And so we'll see if there's kind of a changing of the linebacker in that regard.
All right, we hit on a lot of stuff today. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Make sure you check out the guys during the Inside the Birds pregame show. Sunday, it'll be a 10 o'clock start this week. It is Jeff, Adam Kaplan, Trey Thomas, and Greg Cosell. It's a really good show. I got a chance to watch a lot of it last week getting ready for the Sunday night game. You guys broke down a lot of great things, hearing from Trey on the offensive line and Cosell on a lot of the quarterback stuff, and you and Adam chipping in with your source stuff. It's a really good thing to get you guys ready. So make sure you check that out. You can get it on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, Inside the Birds, and the podcast drops Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 6 a.m., and Geoff Mosher, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Jeff, we will talk to you Friday, man.
All right, brother. Have a good one, Hunter. Be well. See you guys later.